Hello and welcome students. This is Professor Kevin Taylor here with your Week 5 lecture titled Basic Narrative for Design. I recommend that you all read the assignment 4 brief titled Character Concept before and after watching this video for additional clarity with concern to the use of new terminology within this class. So get your pads and pens ready and prepare to take some notes. Almost without exception, good stories involve a character or characters who, along with whatever else happens to them along the way, experience a psychological journey. It is that interweaving of what transpires in the plotline and how that impacts the attitudes of a character in their internal world that gives stories richness, depth, and meaning. It makes dramas, comedies, thrillers, action movies, and all other genres better stories. As writers and story developers, we too go on our own psychological journey in the creation of our narratives. And oftentimes, in order to dig up the diamonds in our imagination, we must plumb the depths of our own character and experience. Exploring the darkest caves of our being to find the most gripping and real stories that we can tell. All stories are about the human condition. Well-rounded characters who have their own unique hopes and fears that drive them through each situation. And this is true whether it's a robot, cyborg, or alien. We relate to the journey because it extrapolates on a part of the human condition, which is something we are more likely to relate to. To quote Dr. Jung,
"Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens."
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Jung. It was an honour and a surprise. Those who find themselves enraptured by the process of narrative development should read The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler. This book is based on The Hero of 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell, who was an avid reader of Jung. Campbell created many foundational elements of creative writing, such as the monomyth, which states that all fundamental human stories are part of a global narrative of our hopes and fears. My recommendation for Vogler's book comes as Campbell's book is a little wordy and hard to digest, possibly due to the large amounts of opiates many believe that Campbell utilised in a recreational fashion. Next, we're going to move on to a discussion of the major archetypal character roles within stories. Make sure you take notes and ask questions in Discord, as later you'll be grouped into teams and will each choose an archetype for your individual character development. The word hero comes from the Greek root that means to protect and serve, and is connected with self-sacrifice. The reader is usually invited to identify with the hero. You admire the hero's qualities and want to be like him or her, but the hero also has flaws. Weaknesses, quirks, and vices make a hero more appealing. The hero also has inner conflict, and in reality, the more the better. Love and duty, trust and suspicion, hope and despair. Ask yourself, what characteristics are important for these heroes? What frame of mind and knowledge of the world do the heroes possess? Where do the heroes start their story, and where do they end their story? Do they change? Looking at the heroes we have on screen, you should be able to recognise that they all start off naive and generally unaware of the challenges that the world has in store for them. This is important as the hero learns about the world of the story, so too do we as the viewer. They are our window into the journey, and we are encouraged to associate with them and root for their success. The mentor archetype. Mentors provide the heroes with motivation, inspiration, guidance, training, and gifts for the journey. This also includes informational gadgets that can come in handy later. Mentors seem inspired by divine wisdom, and oftentimes can narratively be the voice of God. They stand for the hero's highest aspirations. The gift or help provided by the mentor should be earned by learning, sacrifice, or commitment. Ask yourself, what roles do the mentors play in these tales? As more experienced, wiser individuals, why can the mentors not simply undertake the adventure themselves? Narratively, the storyteller must devise reasoning for this. It's also not uncommon for the mentor to be removed from the story, which forces the hero to stand on their own 2 feet and become their truest, heroic selves. This forced independence is often vital to the success of the hero in the story. At the major gateway of the journey, there are powerful threshold guardians placed to keep the unworthy from entering. These characters are not the main villain, but are often the lieutenants of the villain. They are the naysayers, doorkeepers, bouncers, bodyguards, and gunslingers. Narratively, Threshold Guardians represent the inner demons of the hero, their lack of confidence or self-belief. Their function is not necessarily to stop the hero, but to test if he or she is really determined enough to accept the challenge of change, forcing growth within the hero that facilitates their rise to success. The Shapeshifter. The Shapeshifter does not refer to an actual shapeshifter. Students should not consider themselves clever by creating a shapeshifter archetype who is actually a shapeshifter, as I have seen it before and I'm not impressed. The shapeshifter archetype is a catalyst for change. Their role serves the dramatic function of bringing doubt and suspense into a story, as the hero is forced to question their direction and often their view of the journey that they're undertaking. It is a mask that can be worn by many characters in a story, and is often expressed by a character whose loyalty and true nature are always in question. I'd like you to ask yourself how wise and experienced you feel the shapeshifter is as an archetype. Do you feel that this experience and specific state of mind is important for a character to appear to be one thing, while actually existing as another? Unlike the hero, shapeshifters enter the story with a depth of experience within the world that has jaded their view. They don't necessarily need to be evil or bad, but often sit within a morally grey area. The Trickster archetype. The Trickster embodies the energies of mischief and the desire for change. They cut big egos down to size and bring heroes and readers down to earth. They are capable of drawing attention to the imbalance or absurdity of a stagnant situation, through which provoking laughter. The Trickster is a catalyst character who often elicits change within others while remaining unchanged themselves. Tricksters often have an aspect of innocence that allows them to exist in a frame of mind that facilitates comedy and comedic reaction. Narratively, putting the Trickster in harm's way or removing them altogether from a story can be considered a death of innocence within the tale. The Herald. The Herald issues the challenge and announces the coming of significant change. They change the hero's situation and nothing is ever the same for them again. The Herald often delivers what's called the call to adventure, which can sometimes come in the form of a letter, phone call, or accident. Heralds provide the important psychological function of announcing the need for change within the hero. I'd like you to consider what the heralds for change were within some of the stories on screen and within some of your other favourite films or novels. In Lord of the Rings, it was Gandalf.
Don't tempt me, Frodo.
In Harry Potter, Hagrid.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Or in Star Wars, you could argue that it was R2-D2. In The Matrix, it was Morpheus, and in Finding Nemo, maybe the boat. It's not uncommon for the herald archetype to be crossed with another, such as the mentor. The Shadow archetype. The Shadow represents the energies of the dark side. The negative face of the Shadow is the villain, the antagonist, or the enemy. The function of the Shadow is to challenge the hero and give him or her a worthy opponent in the struggle. The best Shadows have some admirable qualities that humanise them, as most Shadows don't see themselves as the villains, but merely the hero of their own myth. This humanity can be explored by making the Shadow an ally who is after the same goal as the hero, but disagrees with the hero's tactics or approach. A fantastic example of this is Magneto in the first X-Men film. Oftentimes Shadows must be destroyed by the hero or redeemed and turned into a positive force. I'd like you to consider how important the Shadow is to a story. Do you feel the Shadow is as important as the hero? Do the hero and Shadow share any connections? Looking through the examples on screen, I hope you agree that the Shadows are vital to a tale. Oftentimes without the Shadow, there's no story at all. So making the Shadow a strong or interesting character is vital to the success of any narrative. People who wish to develop games need to play games. Games are the language which underpin many development conversations, from pulling in gameplay mechanics to art styles during the foundational brainstorming sessions of a project. The same can be said for any creative craft. If you want to write, you must read. And this assignment will see teams sharing their own interests and narrative perspectives to define a story world. This knowledge of entertainment media will be the basis for your discussions, where you will be discussing such topics as what dramatic events will drive the story. Be it war, famine, plague, alien invasion, nothing is off the table during a brainstorming session. you should consider which books, games, TV shows or films you will draw upon for inspiration in the development of this unique story world. This week you'll be assigned teams and Discord team rooms to facilitate discussions where you will decide on the story world, what awful events have befallen it, and what archetypes you will each personify with your work before developing character personalities and backstories to support your design. We've discussed emotional language and how specific terms can send a character in a completely different visual direction. Let's say, for example, you are asked to design a farmer. You will automatically have an image in your head, and those inexperienced in character design will simply jot this image down and leave the character as is. While you can occasionally get away with this, it's not a professional process, and when you're asked to do more, you will struggle immensely. With regard to world design, a character does not exist within a vacuum. Being able to create a character requires an understanding of the world. The greater the understanding, the better, as this shapes how the character will speak to that world and be representative of its characteristics. So to inform the creation of this farmer, we would ask additional questions. Is the farmer rich or poor? And how would that affect the character? Were his parents poor or wealthy? How did he come by the farm? A rich farmer who inherited the farm would be very different from a poor farmer who worked hard to make that farm himself. Is the farmer happy with his lot in life? Why is the farmer happy or sad? Understanding their life, their hopes and dreams and worries allows you to flesh them out as a part of the world that they exist in. To understand the society and culture that inform their development is to see each character represent the world with great fidelity and unifying interest. You generally want to have both positive and negative aspects to your character. To start, make a list of adjectives for your character, then group them together until you can put them under a single label. For example, caring, nice, altruistic could be represented by the single term kind. Engage with this process until you have 4 distinct characteristics for your character. Your character's actions should always be true to these characteristics, which drive and motivate their character. It's not hard to create a character, but resist the urge to create one that is idealistic or perfect. Characters with imperfections or weaknesses of character are by far more interesting and relatable. If this was not the case, then Superman would be the most interesting character in comics, rather than one of the most painfully dull. And dull makes for dire inspiration for motion, so dig deep and construct an interesting character defined by 4 core traits. When this is completed, you add these 4 traits to what is known as a character diamond. A character diamond is a fantastic tool in determining what characteristics your character will personify. If we look at the examples on screen, you will see Captain Jack Sparrow and a mermaid. The first 3 traits we see for Jack Sparrow include self-preservation, greed, and egotism. This creates quite a dark, cutthroat character, but his 3rd trait is loyalty, which comes about to redeem him just when the audience thinks they have a grasp of his true nature. In this way, loyalty is actually the divergent trait, providing a glimmer of positivity for Jack. For Ariel, the 3 major traits are idealism, naivete, and kindness. This creates an image of quite the pushover, but her final trait of determination acts to see her through the challenges that she will face as a fish woman, redeeming her within the eyes of the story. Here is a list of points that you will draft up to help you clarify the qualities of your character. I'm going to paste this in the comments of the video also. In answering these points, you will be required to have an understanding of where your character comes from, what challenges they faced prior to the story, and what they truly desire in life. Through discussions of your team world, you should also find conflict between the characters. For example, the Shadow's primary goal may be to see the world conquered, while the hero may seek to see the world liberated, and the people freed from despotism. This has been your Week 5 lecture on narrative for design. Please enjoy this picture of our new one-eyed kitten, Leela, and I'll see you in the virtual classroom. Happy designing!